Happy Halloween and welcome to a brand new episode of Monday Morning Zombie Hack. This is your host Dylan Lang. We'll be talking very quickly about episode 702 of The Walking Dead, which aired last night, October 30th, 2016. The episode was called The Well. It was written by Matthew Negrete, directed by Greg Nicotero, which is his second episode he's directed in a row. So more kudos to you, Mr. Nicotero, along with your job of doing the zombie special effects. Compared to last week's episode, this one was what I like to call a palate cleansing episode. Basically, it introduced the kingdom, King Ezekiel, Jerry, which is an interesting character, well-loved character now, and gave us a look at what was going on with Carol and Morgan, how they're doing. And other characters from the comic have made their introduction as well. We also even got an appearance by the Saviors, who showed up as well. But it wasn't a brutal episode. It was actually kind of a light, airy, fluffy, somewhat silly episode. For those who don't know, basically the premise was, at the end of last season, Carol decided she was going to leave Alexandria on her own because she was going through a crisis of confidence. Morgan said he would go get her. And while leaving, Carol got shot at by Saviors after she killed a bunch of them, and then one Savior shot her, and she got away. But the other Savior she thought was dead followed her and eventually tried to kill her, and almost did, after brutally beating her a little bit. And Morgan and the Kingdom showed up, members from the Kingdom, people wearing, looked like suits of armor or whatever, riding on horses, using swords and stuff like that, and shields and stuff like that, and they took out the Savior guy as well as zombies. And so Morgan took Carol with the Kingdom people, and that was last we saw them last season. Now this season it begins with them taking Carol back to the Kingdom, and we get a couple more, I guess to throw in a little bit of action because there wasn't a lot of action. They have a zombie attack, and Carol gets up in the middle of it, and she's starting to see, she sees the zombie, but then she is hallucinating because of the bullet wound and the blood loss and stuff like that, their actual face before they became zombies. So there was like a woman in a house who was a zombie, and then when Carol saw her first as a zombie, and then she blinked, and then she looked back, and it looked like a regular person at the window because that was who she was before she was a zombie. So I was calling that the Herschel. What was it I called it? It was the Herschel sickness, as it were, because Herschel believed that everyone could be saved in the zombie apocalypse. That's why he stored a bunch of them, and that they were people once. Herschel syndrome, I'm sorry, that they were people once, they were kept in the barn in that season 2 episodes. So they get to the Kingdom, and Carol sleeps for like 2 days, and while she's out for 2 days, Morgan's been watching, but he's also been learning more about the Kingdom, and so he takes Carol around to a tour, and we see it. There's gardens, and they're growing produce, and they've got schools for kids, they've got a choir, they're being taught how to fight, they have movie night, they have libraries and books they can read. It's a big area. It looks like it's a big community, and it seems to be thriving really well. And we learn that the leader is a gentleman by the name of King Ezekiel, played by actor Kerry Rudolph, who is joining the show. He is the voice of Cyborg on Teen Titans Go. So it's not that it's a very recognizable voice, as it were. And King Ezekiel also has a tiger named Shiva, who we see also. And Carol is putting on her act of being, oh, wow, this is so great. Her prissy, nice act, hiding her vicious, mean streak. And King Ezekiel talks like a king with, my servants, and you're at my disposal, madame, and all this stuff. He's very, very dramatic when it comes to, and very much like the king. So we learn more about them. We also see scenes of some wild pigs eating zombies and getting fattened up. And at first, people were like, "Whoa, won't eating contaminated zombie meat be bad for the survivors?" And we're like, "Yeah, that's kind of interesting." But an answer is revealed. These pigs were basically a tribute for Negan and the Saviors. But they didn't know how they got fattened up, so they're just assuming that they were fattened up on, grains and wheats and stuff like that. And so there's a sequence where King Ezekiel and his crew, along with Morgan, have to give their pigs to Negan's group who comes by, and then of course, who I call Discount Russell Crowe, decides to mouth off to one of the Saviors, and they get into a fight, and things get a little hectic, but then things settle down a little bit. And so we got that. Also, Ezekiel wants Morgan to train this one boy named Ben, I believe was his name. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I think it was Ben. Um, and training him how to fight because he's not very good at using a gun or using like an axe or something like that. So Morgan teaches him how to use a bow staff. And basically the whole time Carol's getting really pissed off because she doesn't want to be there. She wants to leave. She thinks that this town is ripe for the picking because they're weak and they're going to be easy pickings, and she doesn't want to deal with anything anymore, and she just wants to go and be off by her own. So she maneuvers her way out to sneak out on Morgan when he's not watching her. And so as she's sneaking out one night, King Ezekiel meets up with her, and they have a conversation in like a little grove area where King Ezekiel reveals his true self as just a regular guy who I guess used to work at a zoo. And one day, Shiva the tiger hurt herself and was bleeding out, and he decided to take care of her and save her life. So he did, and so that point on, Shiva sort of clung to him. And then when the zombie apocalypse happened, he made it back to the zoo again, and most of the animals were killed. Shiva wasn't, but he was able to get her out, and again, Shiva helped keep him safe, and so they started their friendship. We also learned he did a lot of community theater, so he's played kings before, so he knows how to act. And then he knows also that Carol's act of being an innocent is phony, and they just start talking, and he says he wants to be known as King Ezekiel because people want to be led, stuff like that. And Carol's still kind of hesitant about it, but she kind of needs somebody to listen to her, so she's able to, they have a nice heart-to-heart conversation. He says basically, look, if you want to leave, you can leave, but how about we make a deal, and you can leave the kingdom, but you don't have to leave it very far, because there was a house, the same house that had the woman in it, outside the outskirts of the kingdom. Why don't you move there and live there, which is not part of the kingdom, but is close enough that if you need our help, we will definitely be able to help you. And if we need you to help us, we could come and see you as well. And so Carol sort of begrudgingly agrees to that. So she takes over and becomes the owner of this house after clearing out the zombie. And it looks like Ezekiel is trying to mac on her a little bit. So that's basically the premise of the episode. So no real big spoilers, nothing really majorly spoilerish or major happens in this issue. We do get introduced to the kingdom. Nobody dies except for zombies, so that's a plus. But I said it was more of a palate cleanser. You got some really funny lines, some good conversations, and a great introduction to King Ezekiel and Jerry and other members of the kingdom. So I look forward to exploring a little bit more about them. I am really happy with how the kingdom turned out. I thought they did a really good job with it. I'm very happy with how King Ezekiel turned out. I really enjoyed the episode because it was that palate cleanser you needed to get through everything that you went through last week, and just kind of nice and a fun little episode. Morgan was not irritating. And Carol, you got to see Carol do some acting and as her sweet little self, and also be a little badass Carol too. But I'm hoping that her storyline clears up eventually. Seeing the zombies as people is a little worrisome, but I guess considering everything that she's gone through and stuff like that, it makes sense that something like that would happen to her. So we'll see. People kept saying, "Oh, just wait till she finds out about what Negan did and stuff like that. Then we'll really see the real Carol." That's a possibility too. As I said, I do enjoy. We'll enjoy seeing more of the Kingdom in the future. Next week's episode appears to be, again, probably not going to see anything about Rick and his group going to Hilltop. It's going to be basically, we're going to find out what's been going on with Daryl. And we get to take a look at the Saviors compound. So I kind of like what they're going to be doing. So the first episode, we get the cliffhanger resolution, and Rick gets broken, and they lose two of the main characters. And then last night's episode was we get introduced to the Kingdom, King Ezekiel, more new characters will be popping up later on. See what's going on with Morgan and Carol. The next episode next week will be see what Daryl's up to. And see how the Saviors compound is run, and we'll get to see more of Negan, and Dwight appears to be going to be playing a big role in the episode as well. And I'm also then going to assume then that the fourth episode, I don't know this for a fact, but it's just the way that they tend to be trending. The fourth episode will be focusing on the Hilltop, as Rick and his crew get up there and we find out about what's going on with them. And then the fifth episode will be what's been going on in Alexandria with Negan's first arrival for his first pickup. So I don't think we're going to see Negan in Alexandria until episode 5. Again, just my prediction. I don't know for sure. But let me wrap this up real quick because I'm getting close to the edge of my time here. This episode, The Well, was fantastic. Written by Matthew Negrete, directed by Greg Nicotero. Had a little bit of zombie killing, but no major stories, no major deaths or anything like that happen. No really upsetting situations happen. Just a fun introduction to the Kingdom. We get to meet King Ezekiel and Shiva, Jerry, and all the other members. And maybe one of the things that irritated a lot of people was that there was a sequence with the choir singing. People don't always like choir music, so it was a little bit over the top as well. But other than that, it was just a nice, quiet, palate cleansing episode, which is what everybody needed. Next week's looks a little bit more darker and grim because we get to see what the Saviors are up to and what Daryl's going to be suffering through and stuff like that. But it'll give us a chance to see all the... Ow! Jinx. My cat just bit me. See what all these different communities are up to. And that's basically going to probably be the theme for this season, is Negan is the ruler of all these communities and how the communities are going to start fighting back. So we'll find out what happens. Again, like the episode, this is one I wouldn't mind watching again because it was fun. It was sweet and nice, and King Ezekiel is perfect. Shiva's perfect, and I always love Carol. And Morgan was very not irritating this episode. So check it out next week. As I said, Daryl and the Saviors. Have a good day. Happy Halloween.